Ken, the last time we spoke, you were thinking of joining the Green Party. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, I wrote off and joined, but then I think they've suspended it. I got an email saying apply again in 5 years, because I assume they fear that if I become one of their members, they'll be accused of being anti-Semitic. All the lie gets repeated again and again.
Do you feel angry about that or frustrated?
No, I know what politics it's like. It's a dirty old game. But that 8 years when I was Mayor of London, I appointed as my deputy a Green member of the Assembly, so I've always enjoyed working with the Greens.
Do you think the Green Party were wrong to reject Ken Livingstone's application to join them? 70% said they were wrong. So we've got a discussion coming on right now about the Green Party, and some people are supportive of the Green Party and some people are not. So can we have some comradely discussion and let's try and keep it that way. The first person I wanted to speak to is a Green councillor in Bristol who was on the show a few weeks ago when we talked about the statue toppling, the Colston statue. Christine Townsend, are you there?
Hi, yes, morning.
Could you tell us your journey into the Green Party? What made you join the Greens? And maybe, I don't know, were you in the Labour Party or did you never want to be in the Labour Party? Can you tell us how you got to the Greens and why you think they are the future, maybe for people like us on this call?
Okay, yeah, no problem. So I've been a member of the Green Party for just under 2 years, and before then I was never part of a political party. I've always been interested in politics, but never the party political side of it. I agree with you, Harriet, I should be in Labour, but they left me years ago under Blair in the same way that maybe they left Scotland. So it's very localised for me. I was a teacher, I was involved in a charity called Integrate, and that was a young person's charity, and they were the ones that thrust female genital mutilation as a child safeguarding, violence against women issue onto the kind of national stage. And at a local level, there was somebody who tried to silence those young people from speaking out, who then a few years later was announced as being a local candidate for the Labour Party. And Integrate, I mean, we didn't have this, we had none of this kind of political experience, what it's like to be in a political party and how political parties behave. So we emailed them and we told them about this person and what they'd done. And basically we were threatened with legal action. And that really put our backs up, because we had the party at a local level, or an element of a local level, really kind of trying to silence us. And that was why I stood first as an independent against that person that the Labour Party put up, to show the Labour Party at the local level that we will not be bullied, because the whole point about Integrate was that these kids were being silenced, they were being bullied, so were their parents, so were their aunties and their mothers over many, many generations, being forced to keep their mouths shut about what was happening. And that experience was quite eye-opening for me, because it was grown adults behaving like adolescents and not being as good as adolescents at being adolescent. So the kind of crap that you get when you stand and put your head above the parapet and kind of put yourself into that arena really was like water off a duck's back to me, because I've been working with adolescents for 20 years who were much better at it than any kind of person, adult in the Labour Party at this kind of level were able to do. And it just made me kind of go, really, these people are running my city? I can't quite believe it, that this is how they behave, this kind of level of discourse and the mudslinging and the kind of the attempts to silence you and put you down. And then a few years after that, I stood as an independent for the mayor, because the Labour candidate and the independent candidate were not going to talk about the education system in Bristol. They just weren't going to do it. And that needed to be on the table. So I stood completely saying we need to speak about the education system. That was 2016. And then I was going to stand again as the independent again in the next round of the mayoral system. During this time, I'd met people in the Green Party. Environmental justice is very much part of their bag, and people are aware that that's kind of their history. But what they weren't so able to push forward was the social justice side of it. And I could see that that was an area that was needed. And when the opportunity arose, I joined because I realised that if the education system in Bristol is going to be in the political arena, it's going to be there if I'm able to get elected and be on the council for a good few years, rather than the 2 months or whatever it was of the mayoral campaign, and then it would die a death again, like it had in 2016. So that was kind of my journey, I suppose. But I agree, I should be in the Labour Party, but they left me, so that's it, really.
Right, so it's a sort. You see it as a local journey, particularly. I mean, what your local area? It was about that and what's happening there. It wasn't sort of you have a vision of a green government or anything like that. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, I can't imagine that we're going to have a green government in my lifetime, to be honest with you, given the system that we're in. But there are, I mean, I did look at what the ideology and the policies that the Greens had. I believe in PR, for example. I believe in universal basic income of some description, and environmental justice, and that kind of international element that the Green Party have. And I think that, the pandemic that we've been through and how quickly I think the environmental disasters are hitting the West has really brought that to the fore.
Right. I really appreciate you coming on. Do you regard the Greens as more progressive than the current Labour Party? 52% against 31%. This is 1,300 people of our subscribers. This is a big survey, actually, if you look at it. So, yeah, Greens are more progressive than Labour to most people. If you look at the next one, do you think the Greens are closer to you politically than the current Labour Party? 48% say yes. 34 say no. And then look at the next one. Would you vote Green if they were standing against Labour and no other left-wing party was standing? Well, it's not a majority, but it's still a substantial number. 36% would vote Green against Labour. And are the Greens the only party that takes tackling climate change seriously? 46% say yes, 43% say no. So that's not particularly good for the Greens on that one. And this next one as well, the Greens often make electoral pacts with the Lib Dems. Does this put you off supporting them? That is a weak spot for the Greens, I think. I'm going to move on to Dave Wetzel. I hope is Dave Wetzel there?
Yeah, good to see you again, Crispin.
And you
Oh, I see
Ken as
you
well,
wear a strange hat. Are we all allowed to wear a strange hat?
if you like, if you want. Are you I mean, you saw the Ken Livingstone story that he tried to join, and you're a Green member. So what was your reaction to that Greens not allowing him in?
I think it was the wrong decision. I was very disappointed. I was consulted by email what I thought of Ken joining. I wrote, and I've copied Ken into it, a very supportive email pointing out that I've known Ken since the 1970s, and he's always been a Green socialist, and he, no anti-racism. I think his record speaks for itself. So very disappointed they took that decision, but I'm not surprised. I discussed it with my own local party, which is a small party. We have meetings for the whole borough of Hounslow with only about 8 people, 10 people present, and not one of them supported him joining because of all the slurs, and I tried to argue otherwise, but I can understand why they took their decision, but I think it's the wrong decision in the long term.
Well, that's interesting. So what do you think about what we've heard of the criticisms of the Greens? I mean, the stuff about working with the Lib Dems the thing about what was said before 2019 in the election. I mean, what Jeremy Corbyn wasn't backed enough, perhaps. What's your view on that?
Well, in the 2017 election, the Labour candidate asked our local Green Party if we would stand aside, and I opposed that. I thought as a political party we should run candidates, but they did decide to stand aside and not run a candidate to help the Labour candidate in what was then a marginal seat, who actually won with a 12,000 majority. And unfortunately, it wasn't the 12,000 votes from the Greens, but nevertheless, but they wouldn't do a reciprocal agreement for the local council. So, there's tribal differences, I suppose, in the Labour Party as opposed to the Green Party. I was opposed to the deal with the Lib Dems, but then I'm a Brexiteer. My big thing, as you know, Crispin, is about annual land value tax and landlords creaming off the wealth of this country. And the Green Party has a brilliant policy on annual land value tax, which is one of the things that it's the policies of the Greens that attracted me, being against NATO, being against nuclear weapons. So there was a lot of pull factors why I joined the Greens and left Labour. But I remain a socialist. I'm a member of the Green Trade Union group. I'm also a member of the Green Socialist group. They call themselves Left Greens. And the Green Party is not a socialist party, but it does happen to have quite a few left-wing policies which I endorse. But the main reason I am against the EU is because they spend about 40% of their budget giving it to rich landowners. They say they're giving it to farmers, but if you look at farm rents and you look at farm prices, any subsidies from the EU go back into the price of land, and the farmer ends up having to pay more to buy a farm or to pay more to rent a farm. And who do they pay that to? They pay it to the landowner. So I was against any deal with the Lib Dems, but I happen to hate the Lib Dems anyway. So that's not surprising. And I
haven't got long on here to talk to you, but I did want to ask you. I mean, it sounds like you're sticking to all your principles that I remember from the Labour Party when we went to meetings there, and you left then. But you've got a lot of people in the Greens who are resistant to a lot of the ideas you've got, but you stay in there. Is it a more democratic organisation? Does it allow the possibility that your policies that you put forward would become party policy?
Well, I would like them to adopt an anti-EU policy. That's the only policy I disagree with. And, I've already said about nuclear weapons. They oppose Britain having nuclear weapons. They oppose Britain being a member of NATO. They fight on issues like poverty with policies like the annual land value tax, animal welfare, animals in sport, animals as pets, animals in terms of the wildlife, animals in terms of farming, all need protection that the Greens are prepared to give them a greater protection than any Labour government has ever done. But I'm not here to knock the Labour Party or to knock people who remain members of the Labour Party. In fact, if you're left wing, I'd urge you to stay in, because we will need to have a left wing Labour government sometime in the near future. And I would welcome what Ken said about there being a coalition between the Green Party and the Labour Party. And the parallel to that surely is the coalition between the agreement between the Cooperative Party and the Labour Party. The Cooperative Party used to be a separate party to Labour, It was in the 1920s, I think, that they formed an agreement that they wouldn't fight each other. And I'd love to see the Green Party closer to the Labour Party, but it needs the Labour Party to make the first move. And it's not.
Tony wants to speak. Let Tony speak.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would suggest that anyone who supports the Greens, who is on the left, is really going for political fool's gold. We have a Green-run administration in Brighton. They have just provoked a second dispute with the refuse workers. In each of their administrations, they have confronted the workers, the organised workers, and they've lost as well. There is really nothing progressive about them. Leave aside what happened to Ken Livingstone, where they bought into the whole anti-Semitism nonsense. Just look at their record internationally. In Germany, they were part of the first German government to send troops into a foreign war in Afghanistan. Today, they're right behind the United States with its threats to Russia. In Ireland, they are propping up two Conservative parties, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, in order to keep Sinn Féin out. The Green Party, unfortunately, does not have any class politics. They're not socialists. They want a green capitalism, and that is their problem. And so for anyone on the left to join or take part in the Green Party is a complete fool's errand. You will not get anywhere, because as soon as the Greens get a taste of power, they move to the right. They have absolutely no class politics. They're not anti-capitalist. So I was surprised that nearly half the respondents said they would join or were interested in the Green Party. Really, it's jumping from the frying pan into the fire. We do need a socialist alternative, an alternative which says we don't like capitalism. Capitalism is an exploitative system. You can't make it a nicer, kinder, gentler system because it's inherently exploitative. The idea that one person or a group of people can control vast amounts of wealth and impoverish the rest, that is incompatible with my idea of human freedom. And so I have to say, the Green Party is a nice idea, but really they are just a green liberal party at heart. They worked with our local MP, Peter Kyle, throughout the Brexit process. Peter Kyle was chair of Progress. He's on Starmer's front bench, vice chair Labour Friends of Israel. But Caroline Lucas had no problem at all working with creatures like that. And she gave substance to the whole bogus anti-Semitism nonsense. They never saw what it was. And quite honestly, I mean, Ken's wrong to have tried to join them, but to have rejected his application was absolutely disgraceful. To buy into the lie of Labour anti-Semitism. Really? When everybody who says anything about Israel, like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Wetzel even, they're all anti-Semitic. Well, yes, of course they are, because that is the only defence that Israel has today to egregious human rights abuses. Yes. So
Okay.
that's what I say. I don't want to go on, but
Thanks,
don't fall
Tony,
for the Green Party. You will end up very disappointed.